Hi everyone, Shelly over here at Crafty Cottage Dreams. How are you doing today? I am back today again for my second video. Wow, I am just so extremely excited about this journal. She was a lot. The cover was, oh my gosh, a challenge, but I did it, and I could not be more happier than I am with this journal. Look at her. Isn't she a beauty? I'm just so excited about her. Like, yeah, it was a time-consuming process. This is my design team project for Lydia over at Raindrop Lila for May. Yes, and look at, I just can't stop staring at her. She is a 2 signature curved spine, and that curved spine was inspiration from Lydia. If you have not been on her channel, she has a series of a journal, excuse me, it's so very dry in here, and I feel like I'm dehydrated right now, so my throat is kind of a little itchy. I hope I'm not getting sick. But anyway, that inspiration was from Lydia. So I am using Lydia's Parisian digitals, so please be sure to visit her Etsy shop. She has so many beautiful digitals, and she's so talented. And I've also used a lot of goodies that were gifted to me by my friend Sherry Alexander Burricks. And thank you, Sherry. Look at, and just the closure on this journal is, I love this. So I'm just gonna, hopefully we can get through this journal quickly. And I'm sorry if I cough, and my throat is really itchy right now. I probably should wait to do this video, but this is the closure. And then I have a little pin here with that beautiful rhinestone butterfly. It's so gorgeous. I love it. Thank you, Sherry, for that. That is beautiful, and it went perfect with this journal. So here's the front cover. She has tons of texture, layering, and a lot of beautiful laces that peekaboo out. And as I've expressed before, I love things that poke out of my journals. And she is full. And I did use that crystal knob on the front cover. I don't know. I just think it makes this whole journal. And I've done a lot of hand stitching. And this is the back side, using vintage wallpaper and ledger, and of course Lydia's Parisian digitals. And look at this, look at the spine. This was gifted to me by Sherry, and I've just added more little rosebuds that I had in my stash that went perfect, so I just wanted to fill it more with some rosebuds. So on the front cover, I've done a lot of layering. We have vintage music paper. We have this beautiful tape, a lot of hand stitching. I did make a front pocket, and I added this beautiful trim. This is actually from Crafty Me Shop. Sorry, and I've had it for some time, but I just thought it looked beautiful on the front cover. And I added some tabs. So in the pocket, I just have this. And this is, everything is from Lidia's Parisian digital collection. So I just did a lot of distressing and added that. And then I do have this beautiful letter. Actually, I forget where I got this from. But anyway, Miss Dora Baxter. And I just added one of Lydia's digitals here. And it does contain a letter, which I am not going to read. So whoever is the participant of this journal will receive this. And it is dated, let's see, Monday, September 28th, 1931 at 7:15 p.m. And it contains 3 pages. And that just tucks in there. And as you can see, there's so much collaging here. And then I just made this little tag. And that just tucks right in there. So how about we just take a walk on the inside? I love the crystal knot. I love this journal. I think she is absolutely stunning. So let's take a walk on the inside. So here, this is from Crafty Me Shop, but I've done a lot of collaging. We have some beautiful, everything is, it's about 96% of Sheila's laces that she gifted me. Sorry guys, I had to take a sip of my water. But, and I did use some other stuff that I had in my stash, but that is from Crafty Me Shop. And then tons of collaging here. And I just, this is a pocket here. And again, I've just added one of these, and from Lydia's Parisian digital collection. And a little tag. And I'm going to move that off more to the side. This journal is super large and stuffed to the brim. But it is 12 inches in length. Well, I mean, with this, it is 7. So she is really large. So anyway, look at, and I love everything poking out. I just love that look. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking, but I just wanted to go through it really quickly for you. Isn't that just gorgeous? And I've used Shampoo Stamp up here, some old ledger, and some vintage wallpaper. Look at how everything just pokes out. We have a tag here I created. Isn't she beautiful? Vintage. I backed with vintage wallpaper. And then I coffee dyed this doily. Added rosebud here on the bottom or in the center. And I have these pink paper clips that I love. And we have a beautiful tag. Rosebud trim. Pretty bow. And sample stamp. Vintage wallpaper. And I backed it with, believe it or not, Amazon paper packaging. Don't you just love that? Went exactly the way I had it. And then I just added a scrap of vintage wallpaper here as well. You can play around with. Here's another beautiful tag with some lace and some sparkly vintage wallpaper in the back. I hope I'm in focus good enough, guys. This journal is, I'm going to push this back a little more. Quite large for the space I have on my desk. I added some beautiful French ribbon, and that is from Crafty Me Shop. And then we just have a tag here. Vintage wallpaper, pink paper clip. I love those paper clips. And then here, I love, look at this. Look at this vintage lace. Gifted to me by Sherry, and she gifted me this as well. This flower with rhinestone and pearl. It's so beautiful. Sorry guys, I'm going to take a sip of my water. And then I just have some embossed handmade paper, which I distressed. Added some lace. I have a bow here. Rosebud trim. And I just did some collaging, sample stamp, vintage wallpaper. And then I hand sewed this chiffon and made it into a ribbon and added some rosebud. Isn't she gorgeous? Added some rosebud trim. Some beautiful lace. I love this applique. Sample stamp. Some lace trim, rosebud trim. Everything is beautiful. And then I added a pocket here, and I tea stained this. Again, most of these laces are from Sherry. I just did a little collaging here with sample stamp. I have a tea pen here. I added a little cluster of lace with some trim, rosebud trim. We have this beautiful tag. Sample stamp, some vintage wallpaper. There is another tag. vintage wallpaper. I love it. We have some ledger, again some antique wallpaper. I love that. And here we have vintage music paper adorned with some lace. And then I just cut these little rosebuds out for the center of those flowers. And we have this tag. She's so pretty. And then I had some scraps left over, so I added them with my embossed handmade paper. I didn't make the handmade paper. I purchased that, but I did emboss it. Scraps you can play with, and that just tucks right in there. She's so pretty. Isn't this Parisian digital so beautiful? And this is the center of the first signature. And actually, I just sprayed this applique in Tattered Rose. And she is just clipped on there. You can certainly leave her there or certainly add to the journal. The bulldog clip up here. Then here is another music page, vintage music page with some eyelet trim. And we have that beautiful floral trim there. And again, scraps you can play with that I had left over. And here is some more vintage wallpaper, vintage ledger, and then I made this pocket, and I just entwined some silk through there and added some trim. And then I had these scraps left over, so I just tucked that in there as well of my vintage wallpaper. I love that pocket. And then we have a tag. Sample stamp, vintage wallpaper. And then I just folded that pocket over this page and added some more trim here and a T-pin. Isn't she beautiful? And then I just have a little tab up here of that beautiful trim. And then I just did a little collaging here. This beautiful applique, which I actually distressed. We have this ribbon with some rosebud trim. Some more collaging on this page. I added some beautiful lace, and I added some vintage buttons gifted to me by Sherry. Some more of that beautiful trim. I love those buttons. I really hope I'm in good focus for you guys. Vintage ledger, some more vintage wallpaper, and that is the first signature. And we'll be moving along with the second signature. And here I added some beautiful trim in the center, some beautiful vintage lace, which I like to cluster up and add to my pages with some rosebud trim. Sorry guys, I feel my throat is so itchy today. Look at everything that hangs out of this journal. I love it. Here I did a little bit of collaging, and we have some ribbon I hand sewed with a rosebud trim. I love this lace. It was so hard cutting into it, but it's beautiful. Vintage wallpaper. I love that trim. Doesn't it work beautifully with that vintage wallpaper? Some more vintage lace. It's music paper, and I just made a side tuck here. Here is this tag. Sample stamp, vintage wallpaper, and then I just added some more of that vintage wallpaper I used throughout the journal. Up there, it was extra, so I just included it in the journal. You can play with. Here we have some sparkly trim, and here again is that French. I love this. I've hoarded it for so long, but it was time to use it. I can't hoard things anymore. Like, I have to use them. Some vintage ledger. Here, I just used sample stamp. Some beautiful trim with a T-pin. And this beautiful lace. I love that. Clustered up here. Some of that trim. Here I just created a bow with that rosebud trim. Some vintage ledger. Antique wallpaper. Just did some collaging with some trim. Here's that handmade paper that I embossed. And then I just created a pocket up here and just did some clustering up here. Sample stamp, music paper, handmade paper. And then I just have this tag, rosebud trim here, sample stamp, vintage wallpaper, and I just kind of tuck some of that vintage wallpaper in there as well. And then here is another applique that I just kind of, I went to tea dye it. It didn't quite work out so well. So I got my Tim Holtz spray out in Tattered Rose, which I'm out. But I love the effect that it has given this applique. Here is the center of that journal. So you can leave that there. It's attached with a bulldog clip. So oh my god, this journal is kind of heavy. Oh my gosh. I added one of those vintage buttons and tied it with some twine on this page. I love it. Rosebud trim. This beautiful fabric and a T-pin. Not gonna hold it. She's heavy. I added a little tab. I just have some that embossed handmade paper, a sample stamp, antique ledger or vintage ledger with some antique wallpaper. And then she has a chunky monkey, guys. And then I have some vintage music paper. And I added this eyelet with some of that beautiful trim. I have a couple tags in here. It's kind of like a side pocket. Sample stamp, vintage wallpaper. And they are backed with that. Thank you, Amazon packaging. I love the little bling up there. Isn't she beautiful? Doesn't that kind of look like her hat? She's so pretty. And I like her poking out. And then we have some more hand-sewn ribbon here with some of this beautiful, I love, absolutely love rosebud trim. Just did some collaging, this beautiful applique. I just have a little tab here. And then I just have a little lace cluster up here. I hope you can see with some rosebud trim. And then this is the ends. And this is a side pocket, which I might add, I'm going to add some vintage ledger just to throw in there. But I didn't put anything else in there because she is already super stuffed to the brim. So that is my journal, guys. That is my design team project for Lidia over at Raindrop Lila. It is my May design team project. Actually, I think I might throw in the back too. I might add one of those, another one of these vintage letters because I have so many of them. Anyway, she's super pretty, curved spine, but I really cannot add too much more to her. So guys, she is, yeah, I'm just super proud of her. She's so beautiful. I love everything hanging out. And I love the fact that I created this journal in a way where the front cover is so much shorter than the back cover. I love that look. So anyway, guys, that is my design team project for Lidia over at Raindrop Lila. And I will post all of her links down below in the description box. And yeah. So I hope you loved her, guys. And thank you for joining me today. Until next time, much love and hugs. Until next time, bye.